So a cow, although it ingests lots of cellulose, so starch is lots of glucose molecules joined together with relatively loose bonds. Cellulose is also lots and lots of glucose molecules joined together, but with much tougher bonds that cannot be broken down by any vertebrate. Any vertebrate. The only things that can do it are things like fungi, nature's great decomposers, and
Mm.
bacteria and archaea and other kind of protozoa that can do that. So a cow ingests grass but doesn't digest grass. The bacteria break down the cellulose into its individual glucose molecules. They then feast on the sugar solution, on the glucose. They then excrete short chain volatile fatty acids, the really good stuff, saturated fatty acids, like capric, caprylic, whatever, stearic acid, and that is what the cow digests in order to get her energy. And where does her protein come from? Because there's not much protein in grass either. So although there is obviously some protein in pretty much anything you can eat, she gets her protein from the dead bodies of the bacteria as well. So a gorilla, on the other hand, is a hindgut digester. It doesn't have these extra chambers before the stomach. It has a large cecum, which is pretty much the size of my forearm, and it has a huge voluminous large intestine. We have a relatively very small large intestine with not much volume in it. So in the case of the human, I think something like 70% of the volume of our digestive system is in the small intestine and 30 in the large. For a gorilla, orangutan, other hindgut digesters, it's reversed. It's only 30% in the small intestine, which is where you digest things like amino acids and fatty acids. And they have a much, much larger large intestine because that's where they hold the enormous quantity of bacteria that are required then to ferment the plant matter, the cellulose, down into its component parts that the animal can then digest. So back to the humans, we have a very limited ability to do that. And I think it's worth mentioning that the diversity, the flavor, the makeup of your gut biome is going to be largely dictated by the food that you eat. So if you eat a lot of plants, then you will be favoring the bacteria species that work on plants. But if you don't eat plants, you're favoring the other types of bacteria. So it's this idea of diversity, I think, is a massive red herring, because you don't need a large quantity of plant digesting bacteria unless you eat large quantities of plants. And likewise, you don't need large quantities of meat digesting bacteria. But the idea that that carnivores don't have a diverse microbiome is actually nonsense. They've tested it. It's just different, right? So, and also then back to what you mentioned about the fatty acids that are generated by those bacteria in the gut. We simply don't need to do that, because that is not where we get our energy from, right? We can digest, we can consume fats. Animal fats are the best for us because they contain the right proportions if the animal has fed on a natural diet anyway.
Thanks for watching this video, and you can find the full-length podcast episode here on this channel, or you can head over to Apple Podcast or Spotify, and don't forget to like this video.